Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and we're excited. You guys see 3 screens here, and usually we see 2, but for this week, it's a real special week, and we're excited. We're going to be covering Kipp Academy Football, which we're going to be talking all about throughout this podcast. But we also have one of the best ADs, in the state. I know I've had Jimmy on here before, and he's talked about him. But some we're excited to finally get on the podcast and really talk about Kipp athletics in general. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the head football coach at Kipp Academy, Jimmy Rabbitt, and the athletic director, Anthony Grimaldi.
What's up, Anthony? First of all, happy second birthday.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we turned 2 years old today. Actually, we turned 2 years old today. So you guys are on our 2-year birthday episode here.
I forgot the cake, but that's all right.
That's quite the honor, Anthony. Thank you for having us on. Yeah,
absolutely. And I appreciate you guys taking the time. The fall season is just super busy at this point. And, we're going to be covering Kipp football, which we'll talk about on Saturday. We're really excited about that. But I'm going to jump right out the gate here because I've had a couple football coaches on and now I have an athletic director on. So this question's even better. What I've read on Twitter since the end of the summer has really talked about football having helmet shortages. Last week, we talked to the Arlington football coach who talked about belts, knee pads. I mean, things that I couldn't even think of being a football coach that you'd have a shortage of. Has Kipp experienced the same thing?
That is a great question. It's definitely a question. It's definitely an issue that I think all schools are dealing with right now. The supply chain issue is really problematic. I mean, we ordered uniforms 14 weeks ago, for example. We don't have for certain sports. There's just no way to account for that. And but other than being creative, right now every one of our teams are being super creative. Our coaches are just thinking outside the box and how to get kids certain equipment, and kids are just being flexible. I think that's the biggest thing is our kids are just super flexible and open-minded about our equipment and what we have for them. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. Jerseys are just coming in for football last week. Knee pads, belts. We're just kind of rolling with what we have and just getting after what we got.
I mean, it's crazy. I can't even imagine. I mean, Arlington coach last week, Matt O'Loughlin, was talking about how they had helmets that aged out, but for the first 3 days, they were actually using them where there's no contact just to get kids used to actually wearing a helmet and not just running around out there without a helmet on. So, I saw Craig Turner of Wilmington. He brought it up on Twitter. The messages and the replies exploded. And I was in awe that I couldn't believe how much, football was affected, as I'm sure other sports were in areas as well. So I just thought it was funny. It's a question now I'm just going to start asking because every school has a different answer or has an answer how much it affected them. So that's just really funny. And I got to say, Anthony, I had on Dennis Ingram, who's basketball coach at Wilmington, now is the athletic director, and he had all the Sports Illustrated covers in the background. And I thought that was the coolest background. The fish tank might do it. The fish tank, I see 2 fish in the back right now. They're just kind of chilling out, part of the podcast. But I got to tell you, you might have the coolest background to anybody on here as so far that I've had on.
Yeah, we're trying to get the whole, Marshawn Lynch thing going over here with the fish tank. So,
well, I love it. And so I'm going to kind of dive into Kipp football. I did my homework here a little bit. Obviously, Jimmy's a really good friend, someone that I've coached with and had the honor to coach with, who really pushed me as a coach, both on the field and off the field, someone I consider like a best friend and, I'd do anything for. But when Jimmy started this program, the first time we had on the podcast, we really spoke about the beginning of the program, Jimmy, and how it grew. And I'm just going to throw some numbers out here. Your first couple of years, you're going into your 6th year. Your first 2 years, you went 3-7 and 4-7. So that's a cumulative of 7-14, right? And that's, it's not you just taking over a program. It's really you starting a program from scratch, like kids never playing before, teaching it from day one. There's no system that they're walking into that has already been there. After that, you went 9-3, 5-2 COVID year, 9-2. So that's an accumulation of 23-7. And in your league, you're 11-2 in those 3 years. So to me, the question that I have, and I'm sure the audience wants to know is how did you not only build that in a couple of years, but now really sustain it even longer over a 3-year period?
Jim, you want that question, or is that for me, Anthony?
That's for Jimmy. That's for Jimmy.
Oh, for
yeah,
me.
That's for Jimmy. Yeah, it's gonna get confusing.
No, it's great. I think the big thing is, and after year 2, and I think I mentioned this one of the other times, the coaches and the coaches set the culture. We set what was expected, but it was the kids who bought into the program in that year 3 and that year 4. That could have gone either way. And when the kids bought in to the lifting program, we have a Gronk Fitness and Coach Grimaldi can talk about this. We did a great They did a great job in the weight room, getting us a fantastic place for our kids to lift. Bought it into the off-season training, bought into the system, both offensively and defensively, and what it meant to be a football player, the sacrifice, the dedication, the hours and hours, both in season and out of season. And if our kids didn't buy into that right away in year 3, I don't know where the program would have went. But we had such a great group of kids that were in that junior class that went all the way to the state semifinals that year, that the culture then was set for year 3, carried over, unfortunately, into the COVID year, where just like I know a few other teams like Bishop Fenwick were sort of robbed of a potential Super Bowl. I think we were kind of in that same boat. But that 5-2 year was a fantastic year. And then we really thought we were going to rebuild after last year. But the foundation that group in those first 4 years built and set for those younger kids carried over into year 5 with that 9-2 season. And to be honest, that was a very surprising 9-2 season. And really, we were one play away from getting to the state semis again. We had a big injury in the third quarter, but the thing that I take from it is, we can talk about the coaches and the administration and the AD and setting the culture and doing those things. And we did those things, I think, the right way, but it was the kids who set and maintained that culture and carried it over into the next phase, which has been the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, and obviously you're being pretty modest here to get the kids to buy into that stuff and to do that stuff and consistently in the weight room and everything else. It obviously takes a really strong voice. So Anthony, my question to you is, obviously starting a football program at Kipp, it's about finding the right person. What stood out about Jimmy saying, in the interviewing, process, that you thought he was the guy that not only could get this football program off the ground, but also kind of get it to that next level?
Yeah. So, I mean, Anthony, you know Jim pretty well. I mean, I think the first thing that stands out about him is that he's tenacious. He does not stop. I mean, he just goes and goes and goes, and he's relentless in his pursuit. And he's very effective at communicating that. So a lot of people are very, energetic about what they do, but I think just communicating what you're doing and why you're doing it to the right people really matters. And those first few years, it was challenging because, football is controversial in a lot of ways. So you're asking an entire organization to invest X amount of dollars into a team and saying, hey, this is what we want to do. This is why we want to do it. So if you're doing that, you better follow up on your promises. So I think Jim had a very good vision of how he wanted the program to roll out, and seeing how clear the vision was, I was able to buy into it myself. And then both of us were able to pitch that idea to our upper administration and leadership teams to say, this is what we want to do. We're going to do it successfully. We're going to have a major buy-in within the Kipp community and in Lynn. As you know, Lynn has one of the most storied histories in every athletic realm. So to join that echelon of teams in football was a big thing. And it was something that we wanted to be a part of and, be considered, an equal on a lot of levels. So Jim did a great job of following through with that.
Yeah. And I mean, even to add to that too, I think there's so many high schools in Lynn, right? I mean, there's so many that schools are battling for. And I know obviously Kipp, on top of being, a pretty good athletic school, it is a very good academic school as well. So your student athletes, I know he's named some kids that have gone on to play at schools that are very good colleges, very next level colleges, not just from a football standpoint, but from an athletic standpoint. I mean, how proud is that for you to not only be pumping athletes out in other sports play at the college level, but now football within the first 3 or 4 years? I mean, you had some kids going to some pretty significant schools that not only looks good for the program, but really looks good for Kipp in general.
Absolutely. I think that is the proudest moments we have as coaches, to reflect back on where our kids are at. To be able to play football at the next level is the biggest honor in general. But at these certain schools like Trinity, Middlebury, and Union, I mean, academically, they are juggernauts. So these students are going to be set up for the rest of their life, not just in football, of course. I mean, football is a great thing, but they have to be humans and functioning adults in our society. And these schools are going to prepare them for that. So that's what, at the end of the day, that's all it's about, is our students, student athletes becoming, achieving bigger things in academia, day in and day out.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, Jimmy, do you see us at AC, we're alumni there. We coached there. We loved it there. Are you starting now, being in your 6th year, seeing that alumni come back, seeing those kids wanting to be a part of the program? Are you able to now kind of utilize that in your program where maybe you didn't have that the first 3 or 4 years as you were starting off?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like every game of the last 2 years, especially last year and this year, we've had, and all of our guys are welcome on our sidelines, and we tell them that. So if you look at the picture after Thanksgiving, we have on our wall the big poster board of last year's Thanksgiving win. It's not just our team. There's like 12 players from the year before and the year before that in that picture as well. And they're in there at halftime. And like, I can point to them at halftime and say, these are the guys over here. They're here. They care about the program. They're here for you. They're in the locker room with you right now. It's fantastic. So just that, we say team and family all the time. Just to have that camaraderie and those guys coming back from 2020 and 2021 when they had their off time, they're not playing in college, to support those young guys, tell them, hey, we went through this. Here's what we went through. And they've gone through the same things. And in fact, it's probably more difficult for them because they were setting the foundation versus kind of building upon it. So, having that alumni now, and in a couple more years, we'll finally have alumni who have graduated from college, hopefully coming in to help coach, just like we did. That's the next step in the process is once those guys are done, they can bring the new things they learned from college into the program. We have that infusion of youth, for us, of guys who have been there and played there. And that's one of the best things, is having an alumni to come back and coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think, us being at AC, I mean, to me, that was probably one of the biggest switches in the program, was that you had alumni that were coaching there before, and you might have had like 1 or 2 people, but there was like a 7 or 8 year window that you had 2 alumni to 3 alumni coming back, wanting to coach, whether it was full-time or part-time or breaking down film or going scouting for you. And that can really just change your program. When you have people that are willing just to go see a team live for you, that's 30 minutes away in traffic on a Friday. I know heading up to Lynn, like I'd have to leave at 3:30 to like get there to make sure I'm in time, because if I leave at 4, I might be in traffic for an hour and a half, and miss a game. So, to be able to have that now to start developing your program, as we know, it is just so important. And it's that next step of the evolution of your program, now having them coach who've been there, that can preach your word. Your dog's here. I love it. We got fishes, we got dogs today. I might have to go grab my dog. I feel left over now. One thing that I do want to talk to you guys about, and I would love to hear both of your opinions on this, obviously, is the playoff system that's currently in football. And Anthony, maybe we can talk about how you feel about it in some of the other major sports in the winter and the spring. But, in football last year, Jimmy, you guys were 7-1. You drew a 12 seed. You had to go travel to play Manchester Essex, a team that you had played early in the year and had lost to. And then obviously you had to make a trip to Hull. Traffic, as I mentioned, long bus rides, colder weather. I mean, it's a lot tougher. So talk about your thoughts on the playoff system. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just curious of what your guys' thoughts are. And then obviously, the positives and maybe the things that you would hope to see maybe be a little bit different with that.
Yeah, regarding that format, I think that the new playoff system is very effective. And I think it was this past year was very accurate for the most part. I mean, the teams that were higher seeded and, needed to be at a certain spot were there. So the format itself did a very good job of predicting that. And I think, it's a very good competitive equity tool, the way it's designed right now. So with that being said, of course, there's challenges, right? I mean, you talk about busing costs. I mean, if you have to go to Franklin Tech or, Hoosac Valley and things like that, that's a hell of a ride, and vice versa. So, your budgets go up. It can be long rides for families and kids, but at the same time, if you want to participate in the tournament in any sport, this is the way to do it, because it's going to allow the best teams to play each other. It's in terms of scheduling, as a coach, it's going to allow you to schedule up and play competitive teams, which is only going to make your program better. So I think overall, it's doing a very good job at what it's supposed to.
Okay. Jimmy, just your thoughts on it in the football world. I mean, obviously we talked a lot. I mean, we talk film, we talk defense, offense with each other a lot on the phone. Just your thoughts on it in general, and things that maybe I know your league has kind of done to maybe help out with, seeding as far as power schedule goes and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think, obviously 7-1, we thought we'd have a higher seed, and in retrospect, our schedule was not very strong, and our wins weren't as quality as the opponents ahead of us, right? So we sort of owned that and realized, okay, last year we scheduled what our league was kind of down a bit, plus our non-league games, right? So this year, I know we'll probably get to it, but this year we really jacked up our non-league schedule as much as we could. The league actually had a really great idea. The ADs met, they voted on it, they broke the Commonwealth, which was in two parts, large and small, into 3 separate smaller divisions, so that you'd only have 3 to 4. I think one of the leagues has 4 non-league games, league games. That way you could schedule 5 and 4 non-league games, so you weren't going like 1-1 every week in your league as far as like your opponent's schedule, right? Because every time you play someone in the league, they win, they lose, it's 1-1 every week.
Right.
And that can hurt your power rankings. If you're in a league with 8-9 teams and that's your league is your schedule, the power rankings probably won't add up. And then you get like a team like Revere, who's 6-2, probably shouldn't have gotten in and didn't, right? Because of the predominantly the league that they're in didn't have a strong ranking, and they were kind of, a prisoner to their league, right? So I think our CAC league did us all a service by breaking that down and taking at least 1, if not 2, league games away, opening up the non-league schedule to make it, like Coach said, as strong as we need it to be to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you saw it in high school football last year. I mean, 2 examples that come off the top of my head. I mean, obviously Everett being upset in the first round against Methuen at Methuen. Obviously Everett getting a lower seed and having to travel. I mean, they, like you mentioned, a prisoner to your league schedule a little bit. I mean, that's obviously caused them to play on the road. And a team that surprised me was a team like Reading. A team that pretty much dominated the Middlesex. And when we were talking about beyond coverage, we were talking about going out to cover Reading and just looking at it, like, all right, close game. They've got a home game, and to find that they were traveling to Phoenix kind of blew my mind a little bit, so like you mentioned, and you probably fall in that same category of being that prisoner a little bit. And I like that, because if your league is winning and there's 2 or 3 teams that are top, and then everybody else is kind of at that 500 mark or a little bit below 500, that's going to hurt you, because it's a big league, a lot of teams, and you're not really getting the power rankings, even though your league might be a tough league, and those teams that are 500 are just good teams battling each other week after week as well. So, yeah, there are definitely pros and cons to that. So I wanted to lead into this because, again, I kind of looked at that, and then I did a little bit of homework about your non-league schedule this year. And you and I kind of talked about this in the summer. I mean, you did not shy away from playing some really good teams. And I think that is the next evolution in your football program in general. You've had a lot of success. You're playing teams in your league. Now you're kind of venturing out and playing teams in D7 and D6. And even in some cases, these teams are playing teams in D1, D2 and beating them. So these aren't teams that are just Division 6 teams or Division 7 teams. They're very good. It can compete in a lot of other divisions. So I just took a few of them. St. Mary's last year was 10-2. Boston Latin Academy last year was 8-2. Old Rochester last year 9-3. Greater Lowell 4-7, but again, a large program, predominantly pretty good, very physical, tough football team. So that's a cumulative record of 31-14. So you take away Greater Lowell in that. I mean, that's I'm doing the math here, 27-7. I mean, that's a really tough non-league schedule. And obviously the points add up, and those teams are good and they'll play. St. Mary's is currently 2-0. Boston Latin Academy is currently 3-0. Old Rochester is 1-0. I'm guessing they had a bye. And Greater Lowell's 1-1. They just beat Wilmington last week. And I live in Wilmington. That's the only reason I know that. So you didn't shy away from that. I mean, talk about the mindset of going into that. So I'll ask Jimmy, just talk about building that schedule. And then Anthony, Jimmy kind of coming to you saying, hey, these are the teams we want to play, and kind of what your thought process was behind it as far as the growth of the program.
Yeah, the first one was St. Mary's. I think that was a no-brainer from a city perspective, right? And Coach Driscoll and I have talked for a few years about getting a non-league game in the schedules, and just for one reason or another, the schedules never matched up with the open week. Again, league schedules get in the way of things, so it's hard to sometimes schedule some non-leagues. And this year, it ended up opening up, and it was perfect. It was week 1. Obviously not the result we wanted, but we knew we were going into a juggernaut, a team that was loaded up with athletes and speed everywhere. But that was the next, like, I think you just kind of stole my thunder. That was the evolution of our program, right? Was to step up to the plate and play that next level of team. I went to college with Coach Gilbo over there in Old Rochester, and
former guest of the show here. Yeah,
great guest. One of the best podcasts. It was Coach G on there, and we wanted to get together and play. And though it's a ride, we signed a 2-year deal, and we knew they're tough. And we said, and Coach Grimaldi and I sat down, like, we need to mimic the teams we're going to play in the playoffs, right? The toughness of Hull, the athleticism of Randolph, right? The Western Mass teams that run the wing tee and the power I. We have to start to mirror that in our schedule, so that when we get there, it's not a shock, right? And that's sort of what we thought about when we came into that non-league schedule is we have to class up, number one, on non-league schedule. We'll get the PowerPoints regardless. And, that way when hopefully knock on wood, when we get to the playoffs, we're battle tested, from week 1 to week 8 instead of, having some halftime games. We were really not competitive last year. This year we're, hopefully going to be a lot more competitive in those games on our end all the way through. So when we get to the playoffs, we're ready to go.
And Anthony, I guess I asked you the same question. Jimmy comes to you with that schedule out the gate. I know you guys are a little bit of a younger team, maybe on the line a little bit, but just talk about your thought as far as like, okay, like this is what it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to kind of, hit on the point of like, how do we emulate a playoff type of environment and mindset and culture? There's no easy road this entire year for us as a football program. So last year, if you play a team that might maybe down that year, your ones are out in the first quarter, second quarter, and they're just kind of hanging out, and then you get your 2s and 3s in, gets reps, which is great for the program. But at the same time, when you play a team like Hull, you're playing 48 minutes of football, and those last 12 minutes and things like that, that's when you start to see the difference between two teams. Hull has a very challenging schedule down there. Randolph and everybody, they play in a very tough league. So you could tell that they were battle tested. And they didn't shy away from literally, having a fist fight with us for 48 minutes because they were a very tough team. So we are very much right now in the process of learning that type of dynamic in each game. And, it has a learning curve, right? I mean, we're 0-2 right now, and we're adjusting to this type of challenging schedule week in and week out. But it's an absolute necessity for us to evolve as a program.
Yeah. And I think that that's so important. I mean, going to Hull, I mean, you're playing basically in the Atlantic Ocean and come October, November, it's cold. It's a tough spot to play. And absolutely. So, I've been there a few times. It's a cool football field, but yeah, going to play there in the heart of a season when you're a little dinged up, it's a little bit colder. And like you said, team that's been battle tested, it's good to kind of be ready for that because, you could see that this year, whether that's first round or second round of the playoffs, you could be back there having that game again. So that's, it's smart thinking on your part. A lot of coaches, in the past shy away from that. But I think with this playoff system, like you guys have mentioned, every point counts, and you got to have your team playing teams that, not only do you feel are winnable, but can also get you points, or if nothing else, toughen you up and getting you ready for the later part and the most important part of your season. Before we dive deeper into this, I just want to give a shout out real quick to our sponsor, John Brewers. Starting Monday, October 10th, they're going to have some really cool stuff there. I know Jimmy and I, we've gone there plenty of time after a scout or to grab a bite to eat, have a drink, and watch a game. But half price appetizers on Wednesdays from 4 to 9:30. Tavern Taco Tuesdays. Taco Tuesdays are huge. And again, John Brewers is having their version of it. Unbelievable. And football and flatbreads on Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football, which I think is really exciting. Their flatbreads are real good. I've had it there quite a few times. And most important, Ponder Trivia on Wednesday nights. That place is popping on Wednesday nights. Trivia is fun there. It's a different type of trivia. So if you guys have never been there, head on down to John Brewers Tavern in Malden. Look for Mike, bartender Danielle, tell him Beyond sent you, and you guys will have a great time there. That I promise for sure. But jumping back into this, and Anthony, this question's geared towards you. I've heard many wise people say the success of a school year in a sports year lies in the fall with the football program. You guys have obviously had that success over the last 2 or 3 years, and I think obviously you'll turn the ship and have the success that you'll have this year. Talk about that statement. Is that a true statement? And if so, how have you seen it kind of really help out the school year as far as athletics go, or just in general?
Yeah, it's a very, I think it's a very true statement in a lot of ways, because what it essentially is saying is football is so far reaching in what it is as a sport that it affects so many different things in your school in terms of culture, behavior, etc. I know that in our school, we're very lucky to have an administration that believes in the football program and supports it, unapologetically. Our principal comes to every game. Our upper leadership, executive leadership comes to games, and they support the team because they understand how important it is for character building for our athletes. I mean, in terms of, being on the football team at Kipp, we don't take a lot of nonsense. You have to be a very good student to be on the team, and a very good person. Integrity is very, very important for us. So that trickles to other sports. It trickles in the hallways. And, if you're down and getting beat a little bit, you can kind of feel the energy in a school, affected in some way. But again, when you win, I mean, it's like on Monday morning, the school's buzzing. Everyone's happy. Other sports are happy. And that is contagious in a lot of ways. So I definitely agree with that statement.
Awesome. And for you, Jimmy, obviously we've talked about that before. I mean, a lot of your players, multiple sport athletes, and as a coach, how do you look at that? Like, do you want multiple sport athletes? Do you want kids more focusing on the weight room? I mean, how do you go about then your program in the off season as far as making sure that your kids are maybe involved in other sports, but also really getting themselves into shape for the following season?
Yeah, it's great. I love multiple sport athletes. I think kids competing all year round is what's important, and competing in different things all year round, right? I'm not of I'm not of the specialization mentality as far as like playing one sport.
And I agree, and I totally agree with
right?
that. Go ahead.
I just think that if you're playing baseball in the spring and you're competing in baseball, competing in lacrosse, or competing in track and field, like that competitive nature doesn't go away. And of course, you want as many guys as possible in the weight room. And one thing we've had great buy-in overall into off-season lifting, regardless of how many sports our kids are playing. And again, that's been a staple of our program, has been like the buy-in even with sports. So for me, I tell our kids all the time, I want you to play multiple sports. I want you to compete all year round. If you can't come to a 7-on-7 in the summer because you're playing summer basketball, I'm okay with it. I'd love you to be there in the 7-on-7s. But if you're competing in the AAU game, and you're being an athlete and you're competing, then that's an important thing to have, versus playing one sport all year round. So I'm sort of that mentality where you want 3 sport athletes. I'd love our guys to play all 3 sports, and of course I want them to also get in the weight room a couple times a week too. But if they're competing, that's what's really important to me.
Yeah, and I think that's so great. And one thing that really stands out about your guys' football program, and obviously I want to jump into some other successful programs at Kipp that have been going on for years now, but is your kind of practice schedule. I mean, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of high schools in Lynn, and a lot of times for practice schedule and being able to get on the field and so on and so forth, it's not easy. And most high schools, they practice after school, but you guys don't always have the ability to be able to do that. So having these kids be around all day long and making sure that they are getting their homework done and they are fulfilling their academic obligations, and maybe even getting in the weight room before practice or film study. Your practices are sometimes a night under the light. So, I mean, I'll throw this at both of you guys just in general. I mean, talk about that, because as a coach, that's a lot to manage. That's a lot to manage. Most coaches are out by 6:30. They're heading home. They're being with their families, where you guys might be at that school all day long with those kids, staying on top of them to not only worry about the football stuff, but also worry about the real life stuff. So talk about how you guys are able to really balance that, and really it shows the maturity of your program as far as the student athletes go. Whoever.
Do you want to take a crack at it first?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I will say that, I mean, to coach at Kipp, it definitely takes an open mindset and a grind mindset, because your practices are starting for the most part at 5:30. You're going from 5:30 to 7:30 pretty much every single day. I mean, and that's just a natural, the natural deal in Lynn is not a lot of field space. So we share our practice space with Lynn Tech, our Thanksgiving rival, and so it just is what it is. But in those, what you do with those 2 hours, before practice is important. So what we do is we lift 5 days a week. So if you're not at office hours doing schoolwork, you're in the weight room lifting, and you're doing prehab and any type of rehab program that you're running to make sure you're healthy for practice or for the game. So again, we've gotten our students to buy into that mindset that you're in the weight room, improving every single day, as opposed to just going to Wendy's and walking around for 2 hours and then coming to practice, starting to practice flat. But then, so that allows us to have more time with our kids to focus on certain aspects of our program, which I think in a way allowed us to kind of fast track our success at an earlier time. But yeah, again, it takes a special kid to do that too. It's a long day. I mean, you're in school till 3:30, and then you have 2 hour, hour or so of lifting practice, and then you have to go home and do homework. I mean, that's a real grind.
It is. It is. And like it speaks to the maturity. And I think, football to me has always been the sport that teaches time management most. I'm a fifth grade teacher. And one thing I really stress to my kids at a young age is time management, how to manage your time. Like if you do play sports after school or belong to a club or do cheerleading, it's about being able to say, okay, I have homework. I need to go home and complete this, or I have to go home and eat, or I have an obligation here, and being able to balance that. And I think football players get the best crack at it because it really is like it's a 6-day-a-week sport. For the most part, Sundays you aren't there, but it's 6 days a week, managing and balancing an academic schedule, life, a social life, a family life, and then on top of that, repeating it and doing over and over and over again in a physical sport. Football players are ready when it comes to college because they have a class from 9 to 9:45 or an hour and a half class, and then they got 3 hours off. It's like they know how to manage their time. They're not just going to go back and lay in bed or do not. They're so used to kind of just being go, go, go. I find that they're always the most successful kids academically in a college as well. So, I find that interesting. It's a small little thing that I think is, maybe, other programs wouldn't think about that. But for you guys, it's also like it's a true like shout out to the kids and how they have to be able to balance that and manage that all the time.
I think also just one point I wanted to add to that is, we could, a program who has 2 hours off in between school and practice could just say, hey, go to the weight room and lift. Go ahead, go at it. We have one of the best strength and conditioning coaches, I think, in the state, who's also the AD. He's also on the show right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
National champion over there at Northeastern. And just like kids wouldn't just buy into just any workout on the board, right? So they've really bought into Coach Grimaldi's workout program because it's been so effective. He's actually in there working out with them many of the times and showing them the lifts and sometimes outshining them with some of his maxes.
You got to, absolutely. You got to.
But like that's also a testament to like the dedication of the program outside of football is having that stuff prepared for our kids every day that they want to come and lift because it's actually meaningful and they see how it translates on the field too.
Now, are you doing that for a lot of different sports too? Are you kind of like year round doing that, or is football kind of the main focus for you? But do you do it for other programs at all, or your workout program?
Yeah. So after the season, post Thanksgiving, we start, that Monday when basketball starts in the weight room. So anybody can come in during the weight room. It's an open weight room. If I'm there, I'll put anybody through a program, soccer, girls soccer, softball, things like that. But anybody can come in. But most of the football players are pretty much in there. The majority of the lifters.
I mean, goddamn. I mean, Kipp lucked out here. There's a great AD and a great strength and conditioning coach who's in there. I mean, going there, I ain't seeing Dan Shine going in the weight room and working out with the kids like that, right? So that's incredible. I mean, that is really incredible. I didn't know that. That's something that Jimmy just said. I had no idea. So again, kudos to you because not only are you there with the kids and coaching, but you're also there working out with them. You're the athletic director and you're balancing, like you mentioned, busing and scheduling and practice scheduling and what teams are going to be going where. I mean, that's a lot. You should be really proud of yourself for that. That is something that's really cool. And people that are listening out there, I mean, yeah, this guy's the real deal here, man. That's extremely, extremely impressive. I want to jump into obviously our we're going to be there Saturday. We're going to be your game against Georgetown. We were there before at the Manning Bowl when you were when you were the head coach of the All-Star game, the Gaines All-Star game, the last time we were there. So we're super excited. I mean, talk this year about your squad. I know you mentioned you guys are 0-2, but you're also running a gauntlet of a schedule. So let's be real there. But talk about this year squad a little bit and then maybe your opponent in Georgetown and what you guys going to see on Saturday.
Yeah, I think I think you said it right. We and Coach Riley said it too. We're adjusting to the strength of schedule, right? We played two great teams, St. Mary's and Latin Academy, both league champions in their leagues, and perennial powerhouses in their divisions, Division 6, Division 7. Now we're back in league play. So we've kind of refocused and reinvested back into play by play, week to week, right, game to game, that mentality, and some home cooking at Manning Field is going to really help that, I think, as well. Georgetown, new coach, Coach Hill, over there. We played them a few years ago when he was coaching over at the Matanon. So Coach Hill and I have gotten to know each other pretty well. Great guy over there, so we know it's going to be a competitive game with them coming in. Our team this year, we have some really great dynamic athletes. Our quarterback was Lynn Item All-Star. Our wide receiver was also a Lynn All-Star. Both juniors last year, now seniors, have really set the tone for the year with their speed, athleticism, and their tenacity on the field. We're a little young up front. Our linemen are mostly sophomores and a freshman in there as well, but the learning curve is starting they're starting to get it now. We took our licks in the first 2 weeks, and that was a really great learning experience. As much as you can say a loss helps the learning curve, it certainly does. So I think this week against Georgetown, who runs a similar offense to us, a spread offense, or our guys have seen that, in scout and practice every day. I feel like we're very comfortable moving into this league matchup where we run Georgetown, Lowell Catholic, and Manchester, the CAC Comprehensive, as they're calling it now. So looking forward to a battle with Georgetown. Hoping to get the running game going a little more this week. We have a junior running back who's just been a spitfire for us this year, and hoping to get him the ball a few more times this week, and we're looking forward to hopefully putting up some points.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, I mean, those teams you obviously played early on with the young line. I mean, for those that coach football, know football, a young line's a young line, and when you're going against teams that might be more veteran savvy or been there and done it, and especially when you're going against teams that maybe offensively are power running teams, that translates over to their defense as well. I mean, we've seen St. Mary's plenty of times to know that they're physical on offense and they're physical on defense. That just translates over. Physical run game means you're a physically tough team. Your guards are playing linebackers, your linebackers are playing guard. Like, it is just that those are the types of teams you see. So for young kids, it's catching up with the speed a little bit because they haven't seen that speed yet. And obviously the physicality aspect of it. Coach Hill's actually coming on the podcast next week, not on purpose. That's funny that it just happened to work out that way, that we got you guys kind of on back to back. So we can definitely be talking to him about the game. And we're super excited to be there and to cover you. I mean, listen, you're a good friend. We got some great sound bites. Dave Felice at the Aganis game, maybe the greatest sound bite we've ever caught in a game before, not that guy. And we still laugh about that as a podcast. Like, remember that? That was like absolute gold that we caught completely by accident, which is great. And, before we jump into our 2-minute drill, Anthony, I just want to give you an opportunity as the athletic director here to talk about some of the other sports that are going on at Kipp, because I've seen in the paper over the years, I know you guys have a great basketball program, a great boys basketball program that is very well coached. And I'm sure there's other programs at Kipp that I'm just not aware of. So I want to give you that opportunity to really talk about Kipp athletics in general and some of the teams that we maybe should keep our eye out for this year as the seasons progress.
For sure. I mean, so in terms of like this year, boys soccer is undefeated. They're a very good squad. I'm very excited to see how they pan out. Coach John Langlis, excellent coach, has been with us for 5 years and done a great job developing that program. Our girls soccer team is super tough. I mean, they have so much heart. I'm excited to see them progress. I think girls volleyball is also a program to watch out for. They're like 4-1 right now. And cross country, I mean, they're tough as nails. They're small but mighty. They're getting after it. And then, our basketball team's historically been very good. We've been rebuilding the last couple of years, not having a season. And the COVID year definitely hurt us as a small school. But we have Coach Brian Tobin and Coach Moody at the helm of that, and they're excellent coaches. And we're going to be back in basketball for sure. And then, so I mean, the rest of our sports, track, softball, baseball, I mean, they're all getting after it. They're all working right now. Great programs, great kids, and our cheerleading squad is a pretty big squad. They're mighty as well. So I'm proud of all of them.
Yeah, and that's great. And I mean, I'm very impressed with you, and obviously just learning more about you. I've heard so many great words about you through Jimmy over the years, and now to kind of see in person and listen to you talk and how you're involved with your programs and just the way you conduct yourself. And again, the coolest fish tank I've ever seen. I'm genuinely really impressed, and I'm impressed with the school. I'm impressed with the athletic program, and we're excited to be out covering you guys and really showing it off. And hopefully in the future we can cover some other sports for you guys too. It'd be great. So we're going to jump into our 2-minute drill. This is like a fun segment here. And I said, Jimmy's got the firing squad a couple of times, so we'll throw this on you, coach. So 2-minute drill here, rapid fire questions, 1 or 2 word answers. If you want to explain yourself, go ahead. We're pretty lenient. I do get a red flag if I want to throw a challenge or have you explain something a little bit more, but more out of good fun, nothing that's like serious at all. So I'll set the timer here. And here we go. So you just talked about a bunch of different programs. What's one program that we should all be keeping an eye on this year at Kipp?
I think that number one right now is boys soccer. I think they have a very deep squad. They're very well coached. They're very competitive. So I think they're going to make a pretty deep run in the playoffs this year. So I'm very excited to see them progress.
All right. Give you an opportunity here. A coach that you want to give a shout out to. It could be a veteran coach you've had for a while, a new coach that's coming on the scene. One coach you just want to give a quick shout out to about maybe the job they've been doing so far.
I have to give the shout out to Coach Sarah Griffin, head coach of our girls volleyball team. She's phenomenal. She's doing absolutely everything for that program. I'm very excited to see them, get after it this year. I mean, she's a juggernaut. So we're very, very proud of her and very glad to have her.
Great. One word to describe Coach Rabbitt's style on the sideline.
Oof, God. I think that's a tough one. I will say, I think I said it earlier, tenacious. He has a lot of tenacity, that guy.
I love it. No, there is nothing greater. There is nothing greater than seeing Coach Rabbitt snap on somebody on the sideline, a coach on the sideline. It is my favorite thing to watch. I loved at the Againist game that every coach is throwing 16 offensive plays at him when he's trying just to call one. Everyone's like, coach, run this, coach, run this, coach, run this. And the guy that I was with, I go, John, watch this, only a matter of time. And he's like, I hear you guys. And I just lost it. I was just like, because I get it. When you're in the mood and you're kind of doing it, everybody's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And it's just like, guys, there's too many voices here going on at once. So Coach Rav is all-time favorite sideline watcher. I love watching him on the sideline. I actually super excited about it on Saturday. Team this year that you made, and maybe you answer this in boys soccer, but team that has pretty high expectations this year, whether it's this fall season, winter season, or spring.
In terms of high expectations, I will say our girls soccer team, even though they're very young, right? They're still learning. Coach Julia Wood and Susie Smith and Amanda hold them to a very high bar in terms of what they expect of them as athletes and students. So I think you can see every game them progress, get better and better and better. They're the grittiest team, but that's a byproduct of effective coaching and just not ever giving up on them.
All right. If it was your choice, every sports program at Kipp Academy, if they came out to a song, what song would you choose?
Damn. That's a tough one. Oh my God. It's tough, man. I listen to metal, so that's usually my wheelhouse. So I don't know. I'd probably have to go with something by Metallica.
Okay.
Something like Enter Sandman. Is a pretty good one.
Absolutely.
Virginia Tech come out to that one. I mean, none of my students would agree with that.
I was just gonna say they were like, who?
Yeah, but I like it. It is what it is. So.
When the kids aren't lifting hard in the weight room, the punishment is to put Coach Grimaldi's metal music on in the weight room. So.
Songs that would get us pumped, right? Be like, yeah, and kids are like, what is that? I totally get it. I mean, I've joked for years of really trying to make like a playlist for high schools, because the other thing too is just like the language in music, right? Like as an AD, I'm sure like every song that's being played, it's like, is there any bad words? Is there any profanities or anything that said it's inappropriate? And high schools would probably kill to have like a playlist that they know is just safe and not bad language, and a mix of, past music, and today's music, and, being able to really do that. So maybe I just gave the cat out of the bag of what we're trying to do over the next couple months, but, music, I mean, there's just such good sports music that I think sometimes if kids heard it, they'd be like, this song is actually pretty good. But, today's music is just so different from maybe when we played and competed. So last question I'll ask you. An athlete or two that you want to maybe give a shout out to. It could be any athlete, someone in any program, any season that you want to show a little love to here.
So I will say, in terms of athlete that stands out, I think a student that's super tough that I think about every single day and just battling is Sky, one of our athletes who just comes to practice, and she plays football, super tough. She's not the biggest, she's pretty tiny, but she gets after it. She just, is overcoming a lot and just comes to practice every day and just battles. She's a big one. I'll also say Kevin Rodriguez on the boys soccer team is a captain of the team, very tough, leads by example, and is doing a good job of leading that boys soccer team in the right direction. So I'm very proud of both those athletes.
Awesome. Well, listen, you survived the 2-minute drill. I want to be able to get you plugs on of your sports programs. Like I said, I think you guys are doing amazing things there. I've kept my eye on Kipp. I keep an eye on your Twitter account, your social media, ever since Jimmy's kind of jumped on board. And I'm very impressed. As I said, he's spoken very highly of you as an athletic director. And obviously, Coach Rabbitt, you know how I feel about you and what you've done at Kipp is, I think it's just absolutely amazing. So, I appreciate the time that you guys have given us tonight. We look forward to being with you guys more on Saturday and really kind of showing that behind the scenes all access look into the Kipp Academy football program. So thank you guys tonight for coming on.
Appreciate you having us, and let's set the calendar date for the 3rd anniversary. And hopefully we're celebrating a Super Bowl title and a 3rd anniversary at the same time.
Yeah, listen, that would be absolutely amazing. We'll throw a party at Gillette to celebrate. Right. It was actually will work out perfect. Gillette's the only stadium we've covered a game at the Garden. We're going to be doing a game at Fenway with Medford and Malden. So listen, we need a reason to go to Gillette. You guys got to be the reason here. So get us there. But again, I appreciate you guys coming on and really just kind of doing your thing on here. And I had a lot of fun chatting with you.
Anthony, thank you so much for having us. You're doing a great job, and we're honored to be on here.
All right, awesome. So from Beyond Podcast, I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, guys. Till next time.